Thanks for joining me on the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable. I'm Alice Stockton Rossini. An educator for 38 years, P.R. West Sr. has the best of both worlds when it comes to writing a book. He began his career as a print news reporter in Michigan, Virginia, and Nebraska. Now he has published Legal Issues, Moral Challenges, and Personal Conflicts in K through 12 Education. Guidance for school educators during politically charged times. P.R. West, what took you so long?
I guess it was just a matter of waiting until I had enough experience in order to talk about a field.
Well, I mean, you talk about legal issues, moral challenges, and personal conflicts in K through 12 education. What are you talking about here?
Well, legal issues are pretty obvious between state mandates, federal requirements, so on and so forth. For example, with special education students, they are to receive accommodations, even those students that are considered other health impaired. It's great to provide accommodations for students, and I think most educators believe in doing that. However, many students, whether they're regular, gifted, and talented, special ed, or other health impaired, many of them today do not work to their capacity. So a teacher can bend over backwards, making every type of accommodation and providing every opportunity for a child, just for a child to rebuff it and say no, and still wind up failing. Why put in all of that effort when the child won't even meet you halfway? So that's an example of a legal issue. We're mandated to do certain things, and then there's, of course, a whole bunch of things contractually. Personal issues, many teachers have that. For example, grade inflation escalated decades ago, and that has morphed into giving kids grades. I was very disappointed when my colleagues just shared with me 2 weeks ago. One of the administrators at our school asked her to change a grade for a student. And then when she changed the first grade, another email came to change the grade for another student. And once again, these are students who didn't earn the grade. So that's very unethical. You're not teaching a child anything about responsibility. Furthermore, it's irresponsible to send somebody out or promote them to the next level, and they don't have the competency to function effectively. So, I could give you example upon example upon example of where this happens,
Yeah.
but there's a great pressure to pass students along now that came with the No Child Left Behind accountability mandates. And then administrators started saying what teachers should be able to support. And I think, once again, in concept, everybody agrees, one should be able to support why they have, let's say, a number of failures on their row. However, it shouldn't be or shouldn't go overboard. I mean, fundamentally, I am totally against that.
Do you talk at all about parents in your book and the role that they play?
There's a lot of good parents out there, parents that are responsible. However, we have such a mass of parents that are totally irresponsible. And that's part of the reason why the kids are irresponsible. They don't see their parents being responsible. And so then they adapt some of those same habits and practices and lifestyles. So it makes it extremely difficult when you're trying to get them from point A to point B, if that is not their reality when they're not in school.
You also mentioned critical race theory and DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Yes. 45-47, he did go against DEI, and so much depends on a combination of state and then federal law. So under the Trump administration, he wanted to call DEI, he characterized DEI as unfair discrimination. Based upon the state law where one is at, it will determine, for example, controversial subjects. In some places you can talk about that depending on the state law, and others you can't. So it all depends on what the state law is, and that will dictate to some degree, for example, history teachers, the curriculum that they have to use, or items that are prohibited. I give examples of that type of information in my book. But, I've always used cultural material, nonfiction, to balance out fiction. So I'll give you a real quick example of a piece I know you're familiar with. Most people are. Harper Lee's To Kill a Mockingbird, old fictional 1960 piece. The allegation in the piece is that the gentleman commits rape on a white woman. So I balance that piece out, the fiction, with multiple nonfiction pieces. For example, I have a piece on exoneration from the Innocence Project. And I have a piece that was dealing with incarceration rates, wrongful conviction by news reporter Curtis Bunn. So I take other pieces and I lay out the reality of these are the number of people that have been falsely accused. These are the people who have been exonerated, the number of cases from 1989 to 2022. These are the percentage of brown or black individuals who have been found, which that number was 75%, to be found faultily accused and found guilty. That's why they had to be exonerated. And so my question, the students didn't understand I had set them up, and it's about their naivety. They would say, well, in 2025, this is not going to occur. I would go back and say, well, the most recent data shows that up until 2022, here's the number of people that were falsely convicted and eventually through evidence, whether it was DNA evidence or whatever, that showed that these people were falsely convicted, and the rate, the statistical percentage was 75% of those brown and black men. Or, for example, black men are 7 times more likely to be convicted of rape of a white woman compared to a white man who is alleged to rape a white woman. Okay, so that data is out there from multiple sources. So I bring that type of information into my classroom with the fictional piece, but it's something that, most of the students haven't been exposed to.
I guess if you're a good teacher, it doesn't matter what you call it.
I make 2 points in the book. The first is that in some instances, by default, one could say DEI occurs because it's all based upon, like I said, the state law, what's prohibited, so on and so forth. And anyone who does anything outside of that, it could be characterized as DEI. However, the reality of the situation is DEI is a legal theory taught in law schools, and that's not addressed. The fact that you just mentioned something that may be of discriminatory intent does not mean you are doing DEI. I mean, it is a specific legal theory. So that is not given in K-12 schools. But once again, under President Trump's executive order on controversial subjects, et cetera, if you remember that I reference it in the book, there's a whole list of things that are prohibited that one should not do, and they have been, once again, categorized. I think in reference to the comments you made, any good teacher, depending on their discipline, they may have an ability to bring in what they feel is important, regardless of, what the lawmakers say we should or should not do. I advocate that teachers control curriculum. The professionals control the curriculum. And I suggest that we should not abrogate that to policymakers and politicians. And I give examples of things I have done throughout my career in order to make sure my students were aware of the realities of what existed in the communities for which they live. If you like another example, I can give you one real quick.
Okay.
When I was in the Worthington City Schools, which is a upper crust, middle class public school system, suburban public school system, I wind up using a text for nonfiction entitled Two Nations, Black, White, Hostile, Separate, and Unequal by Andrew Hacker. To make a long story short, those students, they didn't have, because of their age and experience, they couldn't run a test for discrimination on a college campus. They couldn't say that that occurred in the banking industry. You know, he gave all these different examples. But what they could test was the employment arena for the community in which they live. So I paired students up, Black students, white students, so on and so forth. They would simulate the same characteristics and traits, and then they would go and apply for work at, let's say, some sporting goods store or some restaurant or whatever the case may be in their community. And it was very interesting to hear some of their conversations and discussions after the fact. Once again, many students, based on their naivety, were of the belief, well, we're living at, this is such and such and such at the turn of the century. This is not going to happen in today's society. But then when they went out and did the social experiment, and they're like, well, no, we found out that these people, they gave me an application, but they wouldn't give them an application, and so on and so forth. They couldn't believe that these things were happening in their own community. So that's what makes learning real. Okay. Of course, 4547 would say I shouldn't have been allowed to do something like that.
Right. As an educator, how are you able to promote this, without being criticized?
Well, I have my own conscience, my own belief system. I didn't write it for the powers to be. I didn't write it for those who would prefer we maintain the status quo. It was totally a piece written, for example, 40 years ago when I graduated from undergrad. It's a piece I would have loved to have read, recognizing that one day I would go into a classroom. So it's practical. It's very practical, both for novices and for veteran teachers, because I talk about all of the political things that you have to deal with in a school district and the restraints that one may have. And so it guides people regardless of where they're at within the profession. And of course, it took enough professional experience to gain all of these variable scenarios to discuss and or talk about. We're trying to get it in at colleges of education around the country. And so I've had some professors review the book. I've received some good reviews. I've had some practitioners review the piece.
All right, all good stuff. P.R. West Sr., author of Legal Issues, Moral Challenges, and Personal Conflicts in K-12 Education, Guidance for School Educators During Politically Charged Times. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
A successful college basketball coach turned TV analyst. The only thing missing on Jennifer Mountain's resume was children's author. Now she's attained that goal with the publication of her book, Good Boy, Charlie. So, Jennifer, when did you start writing children's books?
That is a great question, because I have always kind of wanted to write a children's book. I was a college basketball coach for 25 years, retired from that. And I was talking to a friend. She's like, just do it. And I was like, okay. And I, in the off season, I go to Palm Desert to play some golf, and I was sitting there and I just started writing. And that's when Good Boy Charlie happened. And then last year I put out a second book, kind of a sequel to the first one. So yeah, it was a kind of a passion project, to be honest with you.
Why a children's book?
I just have I was a teacher and loved young kids. The young kids were probably my favorite. I think giving back to the youth is really important. And I feel like I got a new puppy is kind of what it all spurred the whole thing with Good Boy Charlie. And he's a sweetheart, but he just was ornery. And so I was like, this guy has so many stories and he gets into so many things. And I love dogs. So it kind of just fell into place. And I don't know. I've always wanted to do a children's book.
So Tazzy is a spunky little girl. She gets to pick out her first puppy, which happens to be your puppy. Is your puppy a white lab named Charlie?
Yes, he is.
Oh.
Everything in this book happened. This is factual book. I mean, and really, like, if you came to my house, the pictures in it, my illustrator did a great job. I would send her pictures, and like, it's stuff from my house. Pictures, the rugs, grandpa in it is grandpa. I mean, it's all from real life.
So your illustrator is Joan Coleman. Is she a friend of yours?
No, I found her online. And we just clicked. She lives in Bandon, Oregon, and that's a really famous golf place, and I love to golf. And so I called her and we started talking, and she sent me a couple examples, and it was a perfect fit.
Look at you. So what are some of these adventures? How hard is it to train a puppy?
Well, if any,
what could possibly happen?
Anything and everything can happen with a puppy. You know, labs are traditionally kind of ornery when they're young. And this guy was certainly one of them. And like I said, super sweet and pretty mellow, but like then he would, run with the toilet paper for down the hallway and make things happen. You have to train a puppy and try to be disciplined with them just like a kid. And it's hard because they're so lovable, but man, they can certainly get into things and make a mess.
Tell me what happens. What's the adventure?
Well, this one is just the puppy and all the stuff that he gets into. It's you pick out your first puppy and most kids, I'll do everything, Mom, don't worry. And then it's, things kind of get pushed to the side and the puppy gets into things and does things that he really shouldn't. For example, he, didn't crate train the way he's supposed to and got out, was on his own, and literally ripped up my favorite book. He had my glasses off of a table and had shoot him. I mean, and it literally, you walk into the house and you just sometimes, if you just don't know what you're going to get, you get him a nice comfy bed, you walk into the hallway and it's ripped to shreds with fuzz everywhere. So those things right there where you just kind of go, oh boy. Which if we've had a puppy, we all know. And it was just, a cute little story about a little girl trying to learn how to make sure that the dog's taken care of and picking out, her first puppy.
Well, she's learning to train her puppy. What's the most valuable lesson that she learns?
To be consistent. You got to make sure you take time and be patient. Because puppies, just like young kids, make mistakes, and you have to be patient and continue to work with them, and really be disciplined with them, but at the same time show them love and care at the same time.
Now, this is your first book. Is this the beginning of a series with Good Boy Charlie?
Yeah, this is the first book, and then the second book is Charlie and the Secret Zoo Adventure. And basically, it's the next phase where he goes to puppy school. And he convinces his friends at puppy school to escape and go to the zoo for the day. And it's their adventure of going to the zoo for the day. So they learn a lesson from that, but here's this pack and they're all friends and they escape for the day. And the zookeeper catches them and they make their way back to school before their parents pick them up. But, they have a fun time at the same time and they see all the different zoo animals.
Okay. So how many books you got lined up here?
Just those two.
That's it?
Yep.
You're done?
So far. I don't know if I'm done, but I'm going to take a little bit of a break.
How about Tazzy takes Charlie to a basketball game, a girls' basketball game?
Could do that for sure.
And and Caitlin Clark's there,
Could do that.
and he licks
Definitely.
her hand, and she
Yeah.
tries to explain to Charlie why we don't appreciate girl basketball players the way we appreciate boy basketball players.
I know. We're working on it. We're working on it. It's getting
Well,
better.
it's getting there. It's
Yeah,
definitely
it's
getting
certainly
there.
getting there. Yes, definitely.
Yeah. Now, do you have contacts at, pre-K schools or public schools where you could actually go in and read this book to little kids?
I don't have a lot of contact with that, but we have three little local bookstores that I'm trying to get into. It was very different because I actually started with Good Boy Charlie and I self-published it, and they won't take your books if it's on Amazon. So it's kind of interesting. So I'm learning the process of how this all works. But now that it has actually been published by Fulton, I think I have a much greater chance of getting into some of these little bookstores, um, which will be nice. Local library, obviously. And then I do have a friend that I'm going to reach out to that he's not the contact, but he has a contact that is in the public school system. So I'm going to work on that.
Yeah, I would think too, like, do people know who you are, where you live? Do you have some kind of notoriety?
Yeah, because I'm on TV. I mean, that part is kind
Right.
of nice. And when I've been on a couple times, they've kind of put it on. Hey, she's published a book, and here it is, and so that's been good. I have a friend that that owns a little like boutique downtown where she's let me come in and for holidays do a little book signing and sell stuff through that. But again, it's just the beginning process of trying to figure it all out and. Um, I'm not done with Fulton. Like they're not done with everything yet. So I'm just trying to, I mean, the website's not done. It's not completed yet. So,
All right. Jennifer Mountain, author of Good Boy, Charlie.
right.
Thanks for talking to me.
Thank you.
Armond Pulphus is an accountant for a government agency, and he's working on a doctorate in leadership. And you say that's what inspired your book, entitled From Deficient to Efficient, being the best version of yourself.
Absolutely. All the writings that I've had to do for, for dissertations and so forth and so on. I mean, I just basically said, well, I can take this information and create not just one book, but several books.
Did you write as a kid? Like, were you always a writer?
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, there was a time when I was in the sixth grade. Miss Schneider, she, this is at Daniel E. Morgan in Cleveland. And, she had us kind of just like putting some kind of, our creativity together as far as in the writing format. And I came up with something. I can't even tell you what the title of the manuscript was, but she was impressed with it so well that she submitted it somewhere. I don't know what came of it. Maybe she was able to benefit from it. I don't know, but just had creative thoughts in my mind ever since I was a kid.
So from deficient to efficient sounds like it's a book on how to get rid of all the crap in your life and become more efficient.
Absolutely.
Clear out the space there in your head. But what you emphasize is servant leadership.
Yes. So I emphasize servant leadership, just like I was telling you earlier, it's part of my studies. Servant leadership, a term coined by Robert Greenleaf. But what I do is I take his, works and, take it to another level where I use Jesus Christ as the epitome of servant leadership, a divine servant leadership. And so with this leadership style, it catapults you into higher levels of being able to be functional, not only in the workplace, society, but even as family. And this doesn't just, not just limited, like I said, to CEOs, but, as a father, as a mother, as children, you know what I mean? Sometimes you got a big brother, big sister, and if you conduct yourself with servitude, and I think this is what's missing in society, you'll have a better functioning situation no matter what the situation is.
Well, what you mean by that is putting someone else before yourself.
Absolutely considering them. I wouldn't say necessarily putting them before you, but considering them and making sure that they are valid. Not just feel, but actually be valid.
How do you lay this out in your book?
By, just, talking about servant leadership, talking about, the qualities of it. But then I delve off into what's known as the dark tetrad of personality traits. And so these dark personality traits consist of narcissism, Machiavellianism, sadism, and psychopathy, right? And so these dark personality traits, and of course, I'm sure you've heard of narcissism. People call people narcissists all the time, right? But the thing is that what some people might be identified as narcissistic may actually be, Machiavellians, where they're more manipulative, or they may be sadists, where they are taking relish in watching some people suffer. And so the thing is that not just recognizing it in yourself as a leader, right? But recognizing it in other people so that you can conduct yourself and know how to function when you go throughout just society and your everyday life as a whole, So you have to know the darker sides of yourself in order to be able to work on them and improve yourself in order to be better.
Do you give examples?
Absolutely. There's examples in the book. And not only that, because see what happened is that when you write the book and then, some more thoughts come to your mind. And so I had to write other books. So it's more of the beginning of a series of books. So say, for example, a mother has a son, right? Well, when the son gets older, he develops testosterone, right? Because, he's going through the teenage years. And so mother might not feel like she can properly discipline him physically, right? And so what she'll do is use manipulation, you know what I mean, as a form of discipline. Whereas this kind of dark personality trait, translates to Machiavellianism. And so these kind of things is not a productive way of handling and dealing with a situation. You know what I mean? That's why I would say that it's probably more advantageous for the father to do, to be more of a disciplinarian to the son.
So for the first is identifying what the situation is,
Mm-hmm.
and then resolving it somehow.
Okay, so it's about working on yourself. It's about self-reflection. It's about, knowing, know thyself. That's something that I got actually in the book, because if you know yourself, then you can know the world, right? And so the things that you need to know about yourself, saying it's not just the good things, and to the point where you're defensive when somebody might criticize you and point out the bad things, saying the bad things is the things that gives you the opportunity to self-reflect and improve upon it. So if I say to you that you use profane language too much, and I'll say to you, well, that's just the way I was brought up. So that's a defensive mechanism, right? But at the same time, should I always speak with profane language? And I would say no, because profanity is the tool of the ignorant. There's a plethora of words out here in the world to be able to eloquently express yourself. Why not invest and explore that thing, explore those words, and to be able to improve your language?
Are you able to go out and talk about your book?
I would go into a school. I would go into my school. I would, because I wholeheartedly believe in the premise, in the concept of an improved leadership style, and to be able to recognize the darker, sides of yourself. And the thing is, and this is why I have several books. Say for example, narcissism, is something, that technically, some psychologists something would diagnose you with. So we just, observing narcissism or narcissism traits, but they're not necessarily technically a narcissist, right? Because they got to be diagnosed, right? But at the same time, narcissism, when you're using it in a virtuous way, could be advantageous, say, for example, to an entrepreneur. So an entrepreneur take an idea that absolutely does, it's not a part of society, and they'll say, well, I can make it work, right? So that's a grandiose sense of self, that I could do something that nobody else has ever thought of. So you can use it in ways that's beneficial, but understanding that if you let it get out of hand, it could be detrimental as well. So,
Okay. How many books do you have altogether, do you think?
as far as manuscripts, maybe 13, 14. And to be honest with you, I even got some, some fiction as well. So, these are self-help books. I got some Christian-based books. One book that I got actually in circulation as we speak is Who Gets the Big Piece of Chicken? This is something that I got. Yeah. So I got quite a few, but I want you to be on the lookout for You're So Negative. That's Why I Like You. And this one, I explore and expand upon the notion of the dark tetrad into the dark hexide. So I'm adding 2 more dark personality traits based on entitlement and greed that I don't think gets spoken about enough. And so, that's where I'm going.
All right. Armond Pulphus, author of From Deficient to Efficient, Being the Best Version of Yourself. Thanks so much for talking to me.
I appreciate you, and you have a great, blessed rest of your day.
An Army vet, Alexander L. Walden Sr., still works for the U.S. government, and he spent a lifetime encouraging children to be the best they can be. Combine that with a love of writing, and we've got his first children's book. It's entitled Mia's Adventures. I Am All In.
I've been writing for years. I just started publishing now. And so this is the first book of the series that I'm releasing. Well-traveled. As a military kid, I was a military bred as well.
Oh.
And so, I've been all over the world. And, I've been an advocate for kids to really, dream big, to think outside the box, in terms of being able to be encouraged about, life when things don't seem to be going their way. Just have courage, have courage to know that you can embrace those challenges in front of you and give it your best. Don't quit. I've coached over my career, young ladies in sports, and I've been an advocate for reading to kids at elementary schools, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, the Scouts, all those things, just teaching young people to be young readers and young folks to be encouraged about, the power in believing in themselves as they grow up. So when I was a coach in Tokyo, I met a lot of young ladies that were very shy and not very, very confident in their abilities in sports, in basketball, running track, and so forth. And it was my job to kind of make sure that they wasn't unsure of themselves and that they were not so nervous, to just give it your best, have fun, and let the results, lay where they're after you give it your best, you have fun, and let the rest just come to fruition on its own. So just a plethora of type of experiences throughout not only my childhood, but my adulthood as well. And she's more of I generated her that she's multinational. She's been all over the world with her parents. So kind of like me growing up, kind of like my sister growing up, just getting all type of experiences throughout the world. And then in that sports world, right, that kind of challenges you to have a lot of courage. You have to be confident in your abilities. And then she had that dynamic with her relationship with her mother that most daughters do. Most sons have, get some encouraging words from their parents as they're entering into sports or enter into some type of activity that will give them a little nervousness, but you can get some encouragement from your parents as you're, growing up as an adolescent.
Right. But what I like about this book is that, she's really nervous about running. Mm-hmm. Running is her sport, and the reward isn't winning.
That's right. Because that's life. Because everyone does not win, but everyone can try, and everyone can give it their best. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I made it on purpose that she didn't win, but I wanted her to have a very good attitude without winning. And the good attitude was that she gave it her best. She received a lot of encouragement from her classmates, from her friends, and she was able to refer back to that wise counsel that her mother gave her so that she can complete the race.
Okay.
It's not about winning, but it's about completing and giving your best effort.
How many books are there?
This is the first book out of a 4-book series.
How are you telling people about this book? Are you still around kids? Are you still coaching?
Well, not at my level now. I did fly to Miami and meet with the public school system and kind of talk to them about it. And then Page Publishing Company's been doing very good about marketing it. And with my security clearance, I'm not really allowed to be on social media as much as I probably could be to market the book.
Are you allowed to do book signings?
Yes. Yeah, I'm allowed to do book signings.
Yeah.
I can actually, probably rent some space out at a public library or, I've kind of leveraged Walmart. And so we may be partnering with putting the book on their shelves soon. See how that goes. But then I'll try to meet with some other major stores and see if we can distribute some books through their channels. But book signings will be the next step, obviously. I'll meet with Fairfax County school systems, public school systems. I'll meet with Alexandria public school system soon, hopefully.
Okay.
But I always had a vision to do maybe some book signings, in New York, in DC, and in South Florida, hopefully, or wherever. Mia's Adventures, it's just born out of trying to inspire children, to be bold, believe deeply in themselves, embrace the uniqueness of, whatever gifts they have and do it with a smile on their face with encouragement. I wanted to create a story that reflected courage, curiosity, and faith, that every child should carry inside of them. So things like that is super important to me to kind of balance out what's going on in the world and let kids know that they can read something like this that they can resonate with and never ever quench their dreams, no matter what.
Great. Alexander L. Walden Sr., author of Mia's Adventures. I am all in. Thanks so much for talking to me.
Absolutely. My pleasure. Take care.
Superstorm Sandy was the first writing inspiration for Daniel J.P. O'Sullivan after he fought the government for 5 years to rebuild his Long Island home. Now he's gone out of this world to find inspiration for his first book published with Fulton entitled Within the Moon Book 1, Salvation. So where did this one come from?
Actually, I'd gone through 3 years of surgeries, knee replacement, ankle fusion, a whole bunch of things. And I was driving my wife at the time absolutely crazy. And she convinced me, he's like, look, why don't you go do something? Okay. So I actually did 2 things. I began my PhD and I started writing these books. And I completed my PhD. And in 2019, I completed the first book. And much to my surprise, I just kept writing. I mean, it seemed as though there was more story to tell. And right now I've got the 5th book sitting in front of me that I'm writing the last chapter.
Where'd you get your PhD in?
I'm a geek, cybersecurity and information assurance.
Good for you. What kind of an engineer are you?
Well, I started out as a radar engineer. Now I'm a systems engineer. And all that means is I take all the parts and put it together, the hardware, the software, integrate it onto the platform, test it, make sure that it complies with what it's supposed to do. So it's a lot of fun. I mean, I'm lucky in that I really love what I do.
Yeah, good for you.
I started writing and it's funny because I've got pictures of all my characters in my office. I actually, learned to use, some graphic tools. And because there were so many characters, I needed a visual clue. So I got characters plastered all over my walls. Yeah. So it's going to take on a life of its own.
This is for Within the Moon.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Where'd you get the idea for this?
First, I'm a real fan of science fiction. Okay. Then I started watching this Ancient Alien series that was on TV and found it very interesting. And this is one of the things that they postulated, that the moon was actually a space station. And they give a whole bunch of reasons why and make an argument for it. And, it was interesting. It just kind of like hung in the back of my mind. I've also been very curious about different religions. So I've studied Judaism, I've studied Islam, I've Christianity, Eastern religions, and just, to try to understand why people do what they do and why they think the way they do. And it also just kind of dovetailed into this ancient alien thing, because, they would talk about how, people misunderstood science and confused it with spiritual beings coming down instead of it just being somebody from a more advanced society. Anyway, so all of that nonsense percolates for years and years and years. So I just started writing, what if humans were actually, seeded from another race? And what if this race actually, were kind of parenting us from afar? And of course, I have 8 kids altogether, so parenting is something I'm very familiar with. Okay. So it all just kind of congealed, and I rewrote the first book 5 times. Okay, because I didn't like the way it was going. I needed, a different take on it. But eventually, what it came down to is that this advanced society that created humans got an indication that there was a planet that's going to slam into the earth, and they sent a small crew, a team of experts, to find out if it's true and to stop it. So that's how the book starts.
Okay. All right. So we find out from the get-go that there's somebody out there smarter than we are.
Yep.
So what happens?
Okay. So there's a couple of really exceptional people. One of the things that I felt very strongly about in my writing was that I was raised by a single mom. I have 4 daughters that are very strong-minded, very intelligent people. And so one of the things I really wanted was a strong, intelligent main character. So she's an astrophysicist, and she gets selected to be one of these experts that are going to be sent to Earth in order to try to find out what the heck is going on and can they stop it. So the initial crew consists of, a couple of scientists, some security people, and a medic. Okay, so that's the 10 people that go there. They're on the station just, for a few hours, and one of the security officers almost gets killed. So there's something going on there. Okay. This station had been abandoned for like 15,000 years. There had been nobody in the station. So it's not just one occurrence, there start to be several. So now there's concern, because how could these things just be happening? So who's behind it?
I guess they're in such close quarters, they can't keep their hands off of each other, because there's love and there's romance and there's like all kinds of shenanigans going on there.
Yeah. Well, having 8 kids, some of the things that I'm very well aware of is human nature. Okay. And, the heart wants what the heart wants. And sometimes it's irrespective of the risk involved. So, yeah. So in the middle of all this, the head of security and the team psychologists get together. Another security officer and the chief engineer get together. And there's a lot of coupling, and I guess the relationship ultimately that actually is key to the entire book is that the female security officer gets involved with the young medic that's there. So what's going on here? Okay. They start to go through the station and secure it and make sure that it's safe for everybody to be there. And they come across a bunch of hibernation pods with people from their race still in it. They've been in these hibernation pods for 15,000 years. So first they discover 24. As they continue to explore, they find out that there's more like 100 people that are in these hibernation tubes. And they don't know why they're there. They don't, there's no record of them being there. And so things get complicated.
All right. So this is book 1, Salvation.
Oh, it's a 5-book series so far, and I've started on the 6th.
All right, you are Daniel J.P. O'Sullivan, author of Within the Moon, Book 1, Salvation. Thanks so much for talking to me.
Thank you. Had a wonderful discussion. Thanks.
Let's go to Evergreen, South Alabama, where we find Luther J. Upton doing a radio morning show for 5 decades. He's decided to share a part of his life story in his book entitled Mary Alice's Roses.
Well, it's sort of a compilation of different events that I can remember coming up as a child, and I'm a history buff, so I'm into that. And I said, maybe I should put something in writing. So I started writing, and it took me about, I'd say, 3 years to get it like I wanted it. And see, I was a complete novice at this. And when I finished my manuscript, I bet I went over it 100 times. I submitted it. Well, I didn't submit it yet. I had several educated people that I wanted to read it and see what they thought about it. And they had varying opinions, and we changed things. And when I finally submitted the manuscript, I thought I had all the errors corrected. And they corrected 1,600 mistakes, misquotation marks, missed the period, comma in the wrong place. The one thing that I didn't count on, and I talked to my publishing coordinator, and he says, I was not familiar with something called the Chicago Manual of Style. And I know you know what I'm talking about. I didn't know anything about that. And you see, Southern lingo does not work well with the Chicago Manual of Style. And people in the South talk differently, as everybody knows. But we finally, after bantering back and forth, we got it down to where they could publish the book. And it's had some real good reviews. I'm very satisfied with the way they handled it, and it's worked out pretty well. They're in the publishing business, so they know what they're doing. I let them design the cover and some other things. I gave them some free rein on, and I thought they did a fantastic job.
Okay. What's your book about?
It's historical fiction, some of it, but it's got a lot of different little vignettes in it, and it covers from 1812, I think, going through the War of 1812 and coming on up, and it's got slavery in there, and it's got the real content of the story is, and I remember this from coming up in my childhood back in the 60s. There were 3 young black men and 2 white boys that grew up together as best friends and remained best friends through their lives. And it ends up in 1985. But I think once the reader picks it up, there are an awful lot of characters in there to follow. It's showing how good race relations in the South could be and was, even though there was, segregation and all that. And when the Vietnam War rolls around, 3 of them get drafted. One of them is killed in Vietnam. And it's got a reincarnation element in it, which I've always been intrigued by. Not necessarily that I believe in it, but it adds a little twist to it that makes you think about things. And it has a way of showing that God's forgiveness, God will give you a second chance. It's not a religious book, but it has a religious overtone to it. And see, this area here is rich in history that people in the rest of the country may not be aware of. And I grew up in a little town about 25 miles from here, where I happened to know a lady. Her name, we called her Nell. Her name was Harper Lee. And as you know, she sold 40 million books on To Kill a Mockingbird.
Right.
And her sister was my attorney at one time. So I knew those people, and my wife was related to them, and there have been a lot of good writers come out of this part of the country. And I said, maybe I should put some of my thoughts down. And I did, and this is the way it turned out. So I'm hoping people. I think if people pick it up and start to read it, they won't put it down until they're finished with it.
Why the title Mary Alice's Roses?
One of the characters in the book is Mary Alice. Mary Alice, the main character, his name was Sean McKenty, was an immigrant from Scotland. He joined Andrew Jackson's army in the chase to beat the British out of New Orleans. He came back and became a cotton broker over in Savannah and made a lot of money. But his business grew, so he, like all the other Southerners back then, whether they believed in it or not, condoned slavery. He knew it was wrong, but he had to have some help. So he goes over and he buys this young girl. Her name was Mary Alice. Her father, her mother was a slave, but her father was a plantation owner. And he bought two men with it at the same time. And he took her in as a housemaid. And eventually, she was about 15 at the time. And he let her stay in the house, but there was nothing going on. And eventually he married her. And her name was Mary Alice. And one day they're sitting out on their place, and he said, Mary Alice, where did you get these roses? And that's how they came up. There's not a whole lot about roses. That's just Mary Alice. But Mary Alice was one of the principal characters who later became a reincarnate named Myra. And it was like a love affair that lasted over 150 years. It worked out that way.
So does the book end here? Or is there a sequel?
Well, and believe me, I have wrestled with that. There would be a great sequel. The only book that I've ever thought, the only sequel that I've ever thought was better than the original was The Godfather 2. Here's something that writers need to consider. Not only are you asking your potential reader to invest $20, $25, whatever it costs, you're asking them for several hours of their time to read what you put on paper. That's asking a lot. So I believe that you have to deliver a story that people can follow and get into to get them to read that book and maybe recommend it to a friend or a loved one or whatever. And that's something that I've tried to consider. But the sequel, I'm working on it now. But there's so many characters, you have to go through, but I figure I'll finish the sequel probably within the next year.
Okay, so that's a yes on the sequel.
Yes.
All right. Luther J. Lipton, author of Mary Alice's Roses. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. I hope you'll read it.
Okay. We hope you enjoyed this edition of the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable, where authors from all walks of life come together to discuss the trials, tribulations, and triumphs of publishing their books. I'm Alice Stockton Rossini. We hope to see you back here every Saturday night at 8 o'clock, or listen to our podcast anytime on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, and PodServe, just to name a few. The Author Roundtable is sponsored by ReaderHouse Online Bookstore, where independent new authors come first.